This summer, Instacart is bringing back your favorites from 1999 with prices from 1999. That means 90s prices on juice pouches that ought to be respected, 90s prices on box mac and cheese, and 90s prices on ham, cheese, and cracker lunches. Enjoy all those throwbacks and more at throwback prices, only through Instacart. $4.72 maximum discount per $10 of eligible items. Limit one offer per order. Expires September 5th while supplies last. Discount based on CPI comparison.
It was just past midday on August the 4th, 1981, when two attorneys returned to their small office on East Manhattan Boulevard in Toledo, Ohio. The summer heat outside was stifling, but inside the one-room office, the air conditioner hummed cool and steady. The lights were on and a radio played softly, just as they usually found them each workday. Yet something was off. The front door was locked from the inside, and their 20-year-old secretary, Cynthia Cindy Anderson, was nowhere in sight. The desk was eerily undisturbed. A stack of mail had been neatly placed in the door handle. Phone lines were open, and a paperback romance novel lay face up on the desk. Left open to its most violent page, a scene in which the heroine is abducted at knife point. The lawyers called out for Cindy, their voices echoing in the empty office. Only the low buzz of the fluorescent lights answered. A sickening feeling began to take hold. Cindy Anderson had vanished. I'm Sarah Powell, and this is Obscurata, because some stories have no ending. Cynthia Cindy Anderson was a 20-year-old legal secretary in Toledo, Ohio, who mysteriously vanished on August the 4th, 1981. She was deeply religious, hardworking, and looking forward to attending Bible college with her boyfriend, until she went missing without a trace. By all appearances, it was as if Cindy had simply stepped away for a moment and would be right back. But she never returned. Her purse and keys were gone, yet her car sat locked in the parking lot outside. There were no signs of a struggle in the tidy office, no note left on the door. Cindy's habit was always to leave a note if she stepped out. Nothing indicated that morning would be any different from the hundreds of other quiet mornings Cindy had spent alone here. And yet, something terrible had happened in the span of just a few minutes, while the 20-year-old was on her own. As police would later determine, none of the office phone calls had been answered after approximately 10 a.m., suggesting whatever occurred took place around mid-morning. Cindy's mother tried phoning around 10 and got no answer, a small detail that in hindsight became chilling. Sometime between about 9:45 and 10 on that ordinary Tuesday morning, Cindy Anderson vanished. To those who knew her, the most unsettling part of Cindy's disappearance was that she seemed to sense something like this was coming. For about a year prior, Cindy had been haunted by recurring nightmares, dark, vivid dreams that she was abducted from her home and murdered by a stranger. Night after night, the young woman awoke trembling and in tears, her heart pounding from the same dire scenario playing out in her sleep. In one particularly terrifying dream, Cindy confided to her family. A trusted acquaintance came to her door. She let him in, only for the man to suddenly turn on her, attacking her. Each time, Cindy dreamed the ending no one wants. She wouldn't survive. These nightmares were so intense and frequent that Cindy mentioned them to her mother, Margaret. While her mother initially dismissed them as just bad dreams and not something to worry about, the premonitory nightmares continued to torment Cindy for months. During the day, Cindy couldn't shake the residual dread left by these dreams. She grew increasingly cautious and jumpy. By the summer of 1981, her employers, a pair of lawyers named James Jim Rabbit and Jay Feldstein, had even installed an emergency buzzer at her desk for her peace of mind. If Cindy ever felt threatened while alone in the office, one push of the button would silently alert the shop next door that she needed help. Cindy also took to keeping the office door locked at all times when she was by herself. Normally friendly and welcoming, she had grown wary of every knock at the door and every stranger's face. Close friends later said it was as if Cindy was living in a state of quiet fear, always looking over her shoulder. Cindy's older sister, Christine, recalled overhearing Cindy tell their mother about the nightmares one morning. Christine felt her sister's subconscious was screaming that something was wrong. I do believe that the dreams could have been a premonition of fears that Cindy actually had in her subconscious at the time, she later said. Whether premonition or paranoia, Cindy's terror was very real. By the time August arrived, this gentle, devout young woman truly believed some nameless danger was approaching. She just didn't know what form it would take. As if Cindy's own dreams weren't alarming enough, odd and threatening signs began manifesting in her real life. About 10 months before her disappearance, Cindy arrived at work to find a disturbing bit of graffiti on the wall of the building where her law office was located. Scrawled in bold letters were the words, "I love you, Cindy," by GW. No one knew who GW was, and the message seemed as much like a taunt as a profession of love. It unnerved Cindy deeply to see her name publicly displayed in this way. The strange graffiti remained up for months, visible to all who passed by, before the property managers finally painted over it. But to Cindy's horror, just weeks after it was covered, the cryptic messages reappeared in the same spot. "I love you, Cindy," again freshly spray painted, signed GW. It was as if someone was determined to send her a message she couldn't ignore. Co-workers noticed Cindy's discomfort about the graffiti. It seemed to be more than a prank in her mind. Police later questioned multiple people with the initials GW, including a maintenance man who had keys to the office, but they could never tie the vandalism to any particular suspect. Decades later, authorities would identify the individual responsible for the graffiti and conclude it was unrelated to Cindy's disappearance. But in the moment, for Cindy, it must have felt like a menacing omen, a public declaration from a possible stalker, watching and waiting. Around that same time, Cindy also began receiving unsettling phone calls at work. The content of these calls is not publicly known. Cindy was tight-lipped about what was said, but their effect on her was obvious. Each time one came in, it rattled her. Co-workers later reported that Cindy would go pale and tense up whenever the phone rang, as if dreading who might be on the other end. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, these mysterious calls seemed to escalate. Cindy's family and employers were concerned enough that they noted her distress, though Cindy tried to play it down. It was only after she vanished that one crucial witness came forward about these calls: Larry Mullins, a client of the law firm. Larry Mullins had been in the office on August 3rd, 1981, the day before Cindy went missing, to pay a legal bill. As he sat with Cindy, the phone rang twice. Both times, Cindy answered and immediately reacted with visible fear. Mullins recalled her suddenly stiffening and then slamming the receiver down, as if the call on the line was obscene or threatening. The look on her face, I can still picture it today, Mullins would later say, describing Cindy as honestly and sincerely scared. He had shivers just remembering how terrified she looked. Mullins was so alarmed by Cindy's reactions that he asked if something was wrong. Cindy, trembling, admitted only that the office had been receiving several similar phone calls recently. She did not elaborate on what the caller said or who it might be. Mullins finished his business and left, but he could not shake the feeling that Cindy was in danger. In fact, he was so uneasy that he went home and phoned the police, imploring them to do a drive-by check on Cindy at the office that day. Mullins' instinct that something scared the hell out of her would prove tragically prescient. Unfortunately, by the next morning, it was too late. August 4th, 1981, began like any other day for Cindy Anderson, with the same routine she had kept for months, yet a routine she would never complete. Cindy lived with her parents in a modest home in Lambertville, Michigan, just across the state line from Toledo. That morning she skipped breakfast, something she'd been doing more often lately in order to spend extra time on her hair and makeup, her father noted. Dressed smartly in a white V-neck summer dress with pink pinstripes and sandals, she hurried out the door around 8:30 a.m, calling a goodbye to her family and promising she'd see them later. She had a 20-minute commute down to the office, which was located in a small strip mall on East Manhattan Boulevard. The Nella and Rabbit Law Office was one of the few businesses sharing the plaza. The morning sun already shimmered in waves of heat across the asphalt as Cindy pulled her brown 1980 Chevy Citation into the parking lot around 8:50 a.m. Unbeknownst to Cindy, multiple violent incidents in Toledo had everyone on edge that summer. In the past month alone, several people had been murdered in the city, including 3 employees from that very shopping centre. But as she parked that day, Cindy's mind was lightly focused on the work ahead and the big changes in her own life just around the corner. Cindy unlocked the office door and let herself in, dutifully locking it behind her once inside. The single-room office was quiet and still. Normally, Cindy relished these calm mornings when she had the whole place to herself. It gave her time to organise files, answer overnight messages, and read a few pages of her romance novel in between phone calls. On this day, the air was heavy and humid, already creeping towards the 90s. Cindy switched on the old air conditioner in the wall, letting its reassuring drone fill the background. She adjusted the radio to a low volume, just loud enough to keep her company with soft music, as she went about opening duties. By habit, Cindy peeked through the large plate glass window that looked out onto the parking lot. She had a clear view of the lot and the front door from her desk, and she liked to know if anyone was approaching. Today, the lot was nearly empty, and she didn't expect clients until afternoon when her bosses returned from court. Cindy settled in at her desk as the clock neared 9 a.m. She might have straightened the piles of case folders on the lawyer's desk. Jim Rabbit later noted that their desks were perfectly arranged for the day, just as Cindy always prepared them. At some point, Cindy also placed the incoming mail in the front door handle, per routine, so it would be immediately seen by the arriving attorneys. Everything about the office setup that morning spoke of Cindy's presence and her intention to be right back at that desk within moments if she stepped away. At approximately 9:45 a.m, a maintenance worker or janitor for the building recalled seeing Cindy through the office window, busy at her desk, apparently safe and sound. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Cindy Anderson. What happened in the next 15 minutes is a mystery that has endured for decades. Sometime before 10 a.m, something or someone interrupted the young secretary's otherwise ordinary morning. Perhaps the telephone rang again with a jarring burst, and this time the voice on the line lured Cindy out of the office. Perhaps a familiar figure knocked at the locked door, persuading Cindy to momentarily set aside her fears and let them in. Or perhaps an unknown assailant found another way inside. We may never know. What we do know is that by 10 a.m, when Cindy's mother tried to call the office, no one answered. The phone on Cindy's desk simply rang and rang in that empty room, the sound muffled by the closed and locked door. Cindy was gone. Later, when police reconstructed the timeline, they determined that no outgoing or answered calls occurred after 10 a.m. This aligns with the mother's unanswered call and strongly suggests that whatever befell Cindy occurred in that narrow window just before or around 10 o'clock. Cindy simply vanished in the middle of typing a sentence or reading a page of a novel, without any chance to leave a note or even put the phone on hold. And crucially, she had not pressed the emergency buzzer installed under her desk. The silent alarm never went off that morning. This indicates that Cindy either did not see a threat coming or had no time to react to it. One way or another, in broad daylight, on a busy Toldo street, a horror from Cindy's nightmares appears to have finally caught up with her. When Jim Rabbit and Jay Feldstein unlocked their office at noon and discovered their secretary inexplicably missing, they immediately sensed something was very wrong. The door had still been locked from the inside when they arrived, so they wondered, did Cindy step out and lock up behind herself? If so, why? She was a responsible employee who would always leave a note on the door if she ran a brief errand during work hours. No note was found. The half-eaten sandwich or cup of coffee one might expect from a lunch break was also absent. Instead, the office felt frozen in time from the morning. The attorneys found Cindy's romance novel lying open on her desk to a page depicting a kidnapping scene, the only scene of violence in the entire book. That discovery sent a chill through Jim Rabbit. It wasn't until really looking at the book, particularly reading the passage, that I had a sickening feeling that something was wrong, he later described. It was almost as if Cindy had left a clue behind by chance, a reflection of her own fate written on the page. Cindy's desk chair was pushed back as if she had stood up normally. The office was neat and undisturbed. A calm emptiness hung in the air. Her telephone was not forwarded or on hold, suggesting she hadn't expected to be away long. In fact, it looked as if Cindy might return at any second, yet the hours ticked by with no sign of her. After a quick search of the immediate area and a flurry of unanswered calls to her home and friends, Cindy's co-workers phoned the Toldo police to report her missing. This was no ordinary case of a receptionist stepping out. Something sinister had likely happened. Investigators arrived and noted that aside from Cindy herself, very little appeared to be missing. The only personal items unaccounted for were Cindy's purse and her car keys. Her car, a 1980 Chevy Citation, was still parked outside in front of the office, locked and undisturbed. Police found no signs of forced entry or any struggle, no overturned furniture, no scuff marks, nothing to indicate a fight. It was as if Cindy had either left voluntarily with someone she knew, or been taken so quickly and efficiently that not a single thing was knocked out of place. For an adult woman to disappear in the middle of a workday in a busy area without her car was deeply alarming. Foul play was suspected from the start. Police canvassed the area, hoping someone in the surrounding shops or passing by might have seen something. A strange vehicle, an argument, anything, around the late morning time frame. But no solid leads emerged that day. One passerby, the janitor, had seen Cindy at 9:45 working at her desk, and then nothing. If an abduction occurred, it seemed no one witnessed it overtly. Cindy had effectively evaporated behind a locked door in broad daylight. Inside the office, investigators collected what little evidence they could. The ringing phone had fallen silent. Cindy's last act on it had been answering a routine call from a client earlier that morning, with no hint of distress. On her desk, that open novel felt like a symbolic, grim warning. Detectives noted the eerie coincidence that Cindy had been reading about an abduction moments before one might have happened to her. The symbolism was not lost on anyone, especially given Cindy's haunting dreams of being kidnapped. It was as if her life was imitating her nightmares and fiction in a terrible convergence. Cindy's family was contacted and arrived stricken with worry. They insisted there was no reason Cindy would run off or stage her own disappearance. She'd been excitedly planning for the future. In just 2 weeks, she was set to quit her job and start classes at Bible College in Detroit, with her steady boyfriend Jeff by her side. Cindy had already packed up some belongings for the move, and had even recently told friends how happy she was about this next chapter in her life. At home, she left behind a substantial amount of money in her bank account, and every personal possession, including uncashed paychecks. She was a devout Christian girl from a close-knit family, not the type to vanish without a word or abandon her loved ones. All her relatives and friends adamantly stated Cindy would never willingly put them through the agony of not knowing her fate. Cindy's father, Michael Anderson, in particular, felt a creeping dread that day as he looked at his daughter's empty desk and the parked car outside. He uttered an anxious observation. There are a lot of spooky people around that shopping centre. They drive by real slowly, and Cynthia sits just behind a glass window on the main floor. He had always worried about her working alone, visible to anyone outside. Now his worst fear was coming true. Michael also shared a small detail that now took on new significance. In the weeks before she disappeared, Cindy had started paying extra attention to her appearance. Becoming like a debutante, as he put it. She'd even been dieting and often skipped breakfast to do her makeup. At the time, he wasn't sure what to make of it. In hindsight, he wondered if perhaps Cindy had either been trying to impress someone new or was unconsciously preparing for some final parting, though the latter thought was too painful to dwell on. Regardless, nothing in Cindy's recent behaviour suggested a plan to run away. Rather, it all suggested she was eagerly anticipating a very public future at college and possibly marriage down the line. The immediate investigation treated the case as an abduction. Detectives began piecing together Cindy's morning and the troubling incidents preceding it. When they learned of the obscene or frightening phone calls Cindy had been getting, confirmed by Larry Mullen's testimony of the call on August the 3rd, they had to consider that someone had been stalking or harassing her and finally acted on their threats. They also considered the creepy "I love you, Cindy" graffiti, though it was months old. Was that connected or a bizarre coincidence? The initial lack of answers was frustrating. One officer commented to the press a few days later, "She just vanished, and we've checked the rumours that developed, but they turned out to be groundless." Leads were scarce. The case of Cindy Anderson had all the makings of a classic mystery. A locked door disappearance, omens that hinted at danger, and a victim who seemed to predict her own fate.
It's that time of year again, back to school season, and Instacart knows that the only thing harder than getting back into the swing of things is getting all the back-to-school supplies, snacks, and essentials you need. So here's your reminder to make your life a little easier this season. Shop favorites from Staples, Best Buy, and Costco, all delivered through Instacart, so that you can get some time back and do whatever it is that you need to get your life back on track. Instacart, we're here.
And that's the end of this first episode. I hope you enjoyed. It's really baffling, this story. Absolutely baffling. I have no idea what happened to that poor girl. I like to think that maybe she just ran away, just so my brain feels better about it, and her poor parents and family. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where for £2.50 a month you can subscribe to the Obscurata tier and listen ad-free. We are also on Apple Premium, where for $4.99 a month you can listen to this podcast and our other podcast, The Whispering Woods, ad-free and in the plan. And that's for Patreon as well. I want to say a quick thank you to Rog for fact-checking and editing, and as always, stay curious and sleep with the lights on, just in case.